AEW and WWE went head-to-head in big event formats for one of the first times ever where they sort of converged. It was AEW's main event coinciding with WWE's opening video package / opening match. So did AEW go all out? Well, let's talk about it. First of all, I want to start off on the Wrestling Old Head, by the way. Welcome to the Portal of Pro Wrestling, and we're here to talk about AEW All Out. It was a very busy day for professional wrestling on Saturday, September the 20th, where we've got two big events basically within hours of each other. You had an afternoon, early to late afternoon start on the East Coast for AEW All Out, and then you had a later start, or, standard start time, prime time, for WWE WrestlePalooza, which made its debut on the ESPN app. So with AEW All Out, first we're going to start, there's the good, there's the bad, and there is some ugly in there. And, look, bipartisan guy, I'm the artisan bipartisan here. I'm just trying to call it right down the middle like Bill Alfonso. I certainly had a lot of criticisms for WrestlePalooza. So I'm going to have some criticisms for AEW All Out, and we're going to talk about it. So one of the things that I loved, we'll start with the good. One of the things that I loved about All Out was the fact that there were stories that played out. Now, here's the thing. I know that there are some people that want their stories told a certain way. Thematic elements, maybe little Easter eggs here and there, sprinkle the story throughout the show, things of that sort. These are things that AEW and WWE have a problem doing, by the way. I mean, it's really rare to watch Dynamite, Collision, Raw, SmackDown, even NXT, where you can see at the start of the show there's a situation that goes down. About the middle point of the show, you see there's some kind of furthering of the story, and by the end you get the logical conclusion, but it doesn't have the finality that you would hope for. It hooks you so that you can come back the next week. We have a problem seeing that a lot consistently for both companies, and I understand the criticisms of AEW is that they don't tell logical, coherent, consistent stories. But that's not what I said. They told stories, and it might not be for everyone. And if you grew up watching the WWE product, it may be hard to digest the AEW version of storytelling, and that's fine. That's okay. That's why wrestling is so subjective. Some of the things that I like about All Out, most certainly you're going to have criticisms about, and that's why I invite you to comment in the comment section below so you can let me know exactly how you feel about that. But starting with the good, they did have story progression here, and they did follow a through line, something along the lines of what Jon Moxley and Darby Allin were going through. I mean, it's not for everyone. It had fire, it had death-defying stunts, it had blood. They were using sharp objects to blunt each other. Look, I get it. I understand it's not for everyone, but in order to be a true alternative, which is what AEW is purporting to be, then they are going to try to separate themselves from being thrust into a similar category as the WWE. Now, WWE is furthering an idea of sports entertainment, and they're going yard with it. And they're also going with high production value, glitz and glam, celebrities. We're right next to the film industry type of setup. And AEW is sort of matching production quality in a sense, but the product that they're putting out is more grungy, more alternative. I'll give it to you this way. If WWE is Marvel, then AEW, you would hope, would resemble a graphic novel. Gritty, edgy, and cool. And I don't think they're quite there yet. Subjectively, I don't think they're quite on that level. There are some aspects of AEW that I can definitely go, this is like a graphic novel. Darby Allin, for instance, some of the production value, like when Jack Perry made his triumphant, quote-unquote triumphant return tonight, there was a sense of grittiness to the filming of it. I don't know if Darby Allin filmed it, because it looked very similar to the Adam Copeland debut video, and some of the videos I've seen from Sting and Darby Allin, which I've heard that the cinematography and the directing was done by Darby Allin. He seems to have a great eye. So I don't know if that was something that was done by Darby Allin or not, but it definitely had that gritty, thematic, Sin City, type of film to it, and I really liked it, but we'll get to that later. The bad, still, it is a very long show, and I get it. Tony Khan is doing the antiquated pay-per-view model. He is charging a very expensive asking price for his pay-per-views. So I think it is fair to run a show where you get the bang for your buck. If you're going to charge that much, I don't want a 5-match, 6-match, 7-match, even 8-match pay-per-view. I want to feel like if I'm shelling out this money for the pay-per-view, that I'm getting my return on my investment. And Tony Khan gives you that and then some. You know, he definitely gives you. But hey, here I am. I'm going on a tangent. The ugly is that some of the spots didn't work out. There was some clunkiness. It happens. It's professional wrestling. And also, I feel there is the younger stars, for instance. I very much like Kyle Fletcher, and I feel like he's going to be the future of AEW. But I very much feel, how do I say this? I very much feel that with these wrestlers, there isn't a lot of progression or evolution in their younger stars, okay? And allow me to expound just a tad bit, and I'll explain. The problem here is that maintaining momentum for the younger talent has been an issue. It's been an underlying issue for the AEW. You got guys like Hook, Daniel Garcia, and even to a degree, which I'll get to, MJF. I don't feel like they've evolved much past what they initially started out as when they arrived in AEW. They have something with Kyle Fletcher, but they just have to make sure that he doesn't get lost in the shuffle. And let me be clear with MJF. MJF has an asterisk, most certainly, which is why I made a point to say to a degree. I would say that, you know, after what they did with the whole Devil storyline, they essentially reset him back to factory settings without the bodyguard. I would say a full-on evolution in his character would be that he snaps and starts injuring workers and going crazy, right? But there are other avenues for his character for sure, though he hasn't changed much. I still very much believe they, you know, honestly, they should bring a Hammerstone in and not be so much of a heavy, but more of a friend whom he can trust to watch his back in a roster full of people he can't trust. I've gone way too long of an intro for this. I really want to get through this as fast as I can. I don't want to take up too much of you guys' time. So let's get into it. The opening match for the pay-per-view was the FTR against Cope and Christian. Now, I was very sad we didn't get a 5-second pose there. I assume we're going to get that soon because Christian is still dealing with being an asshole and Cope is saying he's my asshole, and I very much do enjoy that. The match was fun. They played all the hits. Adam Copeland doing an homage to John Cena was a lot of fun. You had Beth Copeland showing up, no longer Beth Phoenix, and they did an interesting storyline there. It seems like FTR is really playing homage to the Dudleys. I wonder what Bully Ray is going to have to say about that, because they very much are paying homage to the Dudleys in every way. Ever since the 2300 residents, they have been doing a lot of revisions of what the Dudleys did and were so good at doing in the late 90s, early 2000s before they went to the WWE or / WWF. This was fine for what it was. The handcuffing spot and the spike pile driver on Beth Copeland I thought was well done, and I thought it does keep the story going. It's interesting they don't have the tag titles in the situation, but I do assume that we are going to get that at some point, and I'll get to that later because there was a tag title ladder match that I want to talk about to further this point. Yeah, like I said, fine for what it was. FTR get their heat back, and they also have Copeland going out for revenge. We may see a dark Copeland, and maybe it's Christian that gets him out of it and becomes the happy-go-lucky Christian again. I mean, there's a lot of different avenues that they can go with this. I really enjoy this story, and it is a story. It really is. I mean, FTR were friends with Adam Copeland and Christian Cage, and they have felt like Cope was holding them back. So that's a very simple story. You see, that's a story that you can say in little words or less, and it gets across everything that it needs to get through to get you invested and interested in it. And so they did that. And the match was a great opener. Cope and Christian teaming for the first time in Canada in over, 20 years or something like that. So really well done. Good start to the pay-per-view and a good way to open it up. Eddie Kingston defeats Big Bill. This match was under 8 minutes. Eddie Kingston is really rusty. I enjoy Eddie Kingston. I'm a fan of Eddie Kingston. I've enjoyed Eddie Kingston since before he was in NWA TNA, or before he was in TNA or Impact or whatever. You know, when he showed up there, I love the stuff that he did on the Independents. I love the stuff with Chris Hero that he had. He always was good on the microphone. He always had a good, spinning back fist, which I don't believe he did a good job of that today. I think Eddie Kingston's just going to take some time for him to get the rust out. I really do. But he's good for what he does. It'll be interesting to see when he gets the rust off, how he progresses. There's a lot of untied story. There's a lot of storylines that are unfinished, that are in queue. There's the stuff with Jon Moxley that he still has to finish. There's the stuff with Gabe Kidd that started off in NJPW. That was the last match that he had where he got injured. So there's a lot to do here. And the match was just, honestly, I felt they could have done a lot more. And it'll be interesting to see where they go with Eddie Kingston having Hook come out and save the day against Brian Keith and Big Bill. When Big Bill was trying to get his heat back, he had Brian Keith come in and they double teamed Eddie Kingston until Hook showed up. So it'll be interesting to see how they forward this. Is Hook and Kingston going to be King Hook or Kingston Hook or the New York Brawlers or whatever tag team they're going to do? Is Eddie Kingston going to reform a version of Outlaw Incorporated, the tag team that he had with Homicide? That should be interesting to see where they go with that. But yeah, this wasn't very good in my opinion. And it's just my opinion, subjective opinion. It could have been a lot better, but you can't fault Eddie Kingston. It's his first match in 2 years, so you got to give him a chance to break the rust out. Mark Briscoe defeated MJF in a TNT match. This was a tables and tacks match. They really overemphasized the thumbtacks here. The thumbtacks played a large role in this. They used every thumbtack imaginable. It was the match of 1,000 thumbtacks. Very interesting that MJF was involved in this type of a match. It's not something that would usually be his forte. Usually is along the lines of something that you would see from Darby Allin or Jon Moxley. Interesting that they went with this match, given that there's going to be a coffin match later on that we get to. But this match was also really well done. MJF is a phenomenal talent. And I love that he decided to work with Mark Briscoe and put Mark Briscoe over. I have been a proponent of Mark Briscoe getting a bigger role in AEW for a long time now. He has got the crowd support. He's got the emotional investment because of his brother passing. So much that they can go with and utilize from Mark Briscoe. It is very unfortunate that they haven't utilized him in a way to where he can be at the top of the card. He has it. He's got a way with words on the microphone. He's got a way to connect with the fans, and he's like a hybrid or something of Mick Foley, and he's got a little Jay Briscoe in there, or Jay Uso. I apologize, Jay Uso in there as well. So you can do a lot with Mark Briscoe. I hope by beating MJF, a former AEW World Champion, they continue the momentum and keep him prominently displayed, and potentially give him a singles title run, not in Ring of Honor, in AEW. It is very much deserved and long overdue. So I hope they go with that. Great match, in my opinion. Not for everyone. If you don't like the thumbtacks, if you don't like the blood and all that, stay away from this match. I had no problem with it. There was very little to be offended by in this match. The Demand, the stable of Ricochet, Bishop Khan, and Toa Leona defeat the Hurt Syndicate, Bobby Lashley, Shelton Benjamin, and MVP. Another match that I had no problem with. Very entertaining. MVP putting over the Demand was the right move. This establishes them, puts them further up the card. Gates of Agony have had an issue where I thought that they were fine. I thought they were a good tag team, but on television and prominently displayed on primetime television with Dynamite, they never really got that opportunity to shine. And ever since they've been with Ricochet, they've been built up a lot more. And Ricochet playing the leader of this group, but also the mic guy for the Gates of Agony, I think really, really works. And them going over a team as big as Hurt Syndicate can only do good things for them. And believe it or not, there is a story. AEW likes to do this thing with stories where it's like, remember that? And so let me expound. So it's like, when Ricochet first came into the AEW, MVP gave him a card. And I don't know if you guys remember that, but I'm sure a lot of you are going like, oh yeah. They didn't do a whole lot of follow-up with that, but it's easy to go back and go, oh, well, that was the start. You know, they never really wrapped it up. They didn't have continuity on television. But then when you see this this trios match rather, then you can see that, oh, there was a little bit of a suggestion of a story there. There's some history there, right? AEW does that a lot. So they're continuing and furthering that idea and moving it along. So now Ricochet and Gates of Agony are definitely in demand with a win over the Hurt Syndicate. I thought this was a fun match. It didn't overstay its welcome, and it really got over the Gates of Agony and Ricochet as the demand in a real way. So I was really happy with this match. What Scott Keith would call perfectly acceptable wrestling. If you know, you know. Mercedes Moné defeats Rio for the AEW TBS Championship. I felt, and I'm going to be completely transparent here, that the fans didn't really give Rio an opportunity. I think they knew there was a foregone conclusion that Mercedes Moné was going to win this match, so they weren't completely invested in Rio. I don't have a problem with Rio. I think that there's a contingency of fans, and of course Jim Cornette, that really aren't a fan of her. I've never had a problem with Rio. I think she is a really good wrestler in my opinion, and I think she does some really exciting stuff, and you know, she's that smiley fan favorite that everybody should get behind, but the fans weren't behind, and I think that did affect the match in a way. I think wrestling is very much when the crowd is participating, it really brings you in and you participate as well. But the good thing about this match was that Riho and Mercedes Moné, they triumphed over the lack of crowd response, and I think they still put on a perfectly acceptable wrestling match. It wasn't as good as Io Sky and Stephanie Vaquer, sorry AEW fans, but it still provided enough entertainment and told a good story enough in the ring that I liked it and I was invested. This is one of those matches that if you put it on mute, you would still have a good time watching it. And I think that's the best compliment that I can give this type of a match. Mercedes Moné gets the win on that one. Kazuchika Okada defeats Konosuke Takeshita and Mascara Dorada. Very much a coming out party for Mascara Dorada. He is a phenomenal talent. He is excellent in the ring. The guy is just, he chews up the scenery on camera, and I'd love to see him do stuff with Bandito. I'd love to see him do stuff with some of the other high flyers in the AEW. I think they can do some great stuff. Dorada is a talent, man. That is like a hidden gem in CMLL, and I'd love that he's getting time on American television to show us what he is capable of. I think they're furthering along the story between Kazuchika Okada and Konosuke Takeshita. This is a slow burn. They're building this to a point where it's either going to happen at Wrestle Dream or it's going to happen at World's End. At some point, you're going to get Okada and Takeshita. I believe you're going to get them at an AEW pay-per-view, and I also believe you're going to get that at an NJPW big event as well. And I think that it's nice that they're slow cooking this one a little bit and they're letting it simmer for a little bit. I think that is being done in a real way because the fans really want to cheer Konosuke Takeshita, and when they're allowed to fully cheer Konosuke Takeshita, he's going to be one of the most over guys in the company. And moving on, Jon Moxley defeats Darby Allin in a coffin match. Did not expect that. I will say, and I've made this comparison before, if Jon Moxley is Tony Khan's Raven, we just were bear witness and revealed that Darby Allin is his Tommy Dreamer. Maybe the entire arc of this story is Darby Allin finally getting revenge on Jon Moxley, and maybe they don't want to burn that off right away. Maybe they want to give the fans an opportunity to witness Darby Allin handcuff Jon Moxley on a steel cage and smash the chair over his head. Finally get that revenge. I mean, these guys do have great chemistry. They seem to really enjoy working with one another. I think they have a lot of similar sensibilities as far as professional wrestling goes and taking things to the absolute limit. This match wasn't a very offensive match to me, although I know a few people will be offended by some of the things that they did in this match. I wasn't completely disgusted or thrown off. There wasn't a whole lot of gore in this match, but we'll get to what they had post-match later. This, in my opinion, so I was speaking about this in the preview, in the predictions video that I did. I think that we are going to gear up for a potential fire match. And I think what they can do is take from WWC, which is the Puerto Rican promotion. They did this in the late 70s, I believe early 80s with Carlos Colon, where I think he wrestled Pedro Morales, but you can fact check me, leave it in the comments if you actually can find this match. But there was a match where the outside of the ropes, around the circumference of the ring, there was a wire that had little fireballs on it, and it was a fire match. and there was a lot of intensity and a lot of suspense with Pedro Morales trying to, if it is Pedro Morales, like I said, I don't know for sure, trying to put Carlos Colon's head in the fireball, and there were several fireballs made up around the ring. I believe we get some sort of matchup with that going forward, because I'll bury the lead, and there was a post-match situation where Darby Allin came up out of the coffin. Jon Moxley was doing this eulogy and paying respects to Darby Allin, saying that he's in the coffin and he's gone. He let the other members of the Death Riders leave and drive off, and then he was going to pay his respects and do Lord knows what to the coffin with Darby Allin in it. Darby Allin pops up with the pipe, hits Jon Moxley, and then puts him in a body bag and sets it on fire. Of course, there's some ring production guys that come out and they put the fire out. So I believe that is the build-up to an eventual fire match that we get with Darby Allin and Jon Moxley. So you got Tommy Dreamer and you got Raven for Tony Khan there, and I think that he has a lot to play with in that idea. Is Jon Moxley always going to get a one-up on Darby Allin until Darby Allin finally gets his revenge? One thing that I also noted was that the commentary team, which I very much like the chemistry between Taz and Bryan Danielson, I think they really work together in a real way. Bryan Danielson being more of a technical analyst and Taz having some input on submission holds, but they gel really well together. Excalibur doesn't have to do a whole lot of work on commentary with those two around. I think they all play off of each other really well. You can literally put anyone in the position of Excalibur and they'll have a good time working with Bryan Danielson and Taz, just because of their extensive knowledge of professional wrestling and their ability to work off one another, making some strong and valid points. I would have loved to see Mauro Ranallo in between those two guys. I think Mauro would have a lot of fun with those guys, but I digress. So again, match was fine for what it was, nothing too offensive, but it is furthering this idea that Darby Allin is trying to beat Jon Moxley, and when he does, I believe that Jon Moxley should go away for a while, come back with further respects, and become a fan favorite. So I think we're a ways away from that happening, in my opinion. In a four-way dance for the AEW Women's World Championship, Chris Statlander defeats Timeless Toni Storm, Jamie Hayter, and Tekla. Chris Statlander is another one. She kind of goes in the group with Daniel Garcia and Hook as far as not having a whole lot of evolution since showing up, and she's been one of the homers, the AEW homers, the homegrown talent that showed up in AEW. We didn't really know much about her, and she's really built up her acclaim and fandom. The idea, though, is that Chris Statlander hasn't really evolved or had an emotional connection with the crowd to get them invested in her a lot. And she's had a lot of character changes, but not a whole lot that gets us to follow along and be invested. This win over Toni Storm is interesting. She has loose ties to the Death Riders with Wheeler Yuta, them being a part of a previous group called Best Friends. So Wheeler Yuta is trying to recruit Chris Statlander into the Death Riders. So there is a story idea there. Whether or not she does join is going to be up for grabs. She just went from most hated to fan favorite, and it looks like she's going to go back to most hated again if this is the conclusion of the storyline that they decide to go in their progression. It's going to be interesting to see how they keep her momentum, what they do with her character to get us invested, and what they do with Timeless Toni Storm in the meantime. But it was time for Timeless to, become the underdog again, because I think she is really good coming up from behind and trying to become triumphant and get the title back. And I think she didn't really need to work as the champion. You gotta, at some point, get some of these challengers over so Toni Storm has a formidable opponent. So I don't know if this was the right time to do that, but they did what they did, and let's see what they're going to do going forward. This match, again, fine for what it was. I really like Tekla here. She had a standout performance, and I'd love to see what they do with her going forward. She finally got some mic time on Collision, albeit a tiny bit of mic time. I'd like to see a little bit more of her character shine and see what she's capable of as well. But the match and Jamie Hayter, I can't say enough about her. I'm a big fan of Jamie Hayter, and I'd love to see her finally get her opportunity to be AEW World Champion for the women's division, a title that she never lost. She just had to relinquish because she was injured. So we'll go back to that at some other time. Brodito defeats the Young Bucks, Jet Speed, and the Don Callis family, Hechicero, and Josh Alexander. This was all over the place. This was a very exciting ladder match. Can't go wrong with these types of ladder matches where you have all these high spots, the steal the show type of atmosphere. I thought they all did really, really well. The right team went over, although I expected Young Bucks to win, but at least they're slow burning that, and I really like that. Brodito get the win here, and they continue their title reign, something that I felt was very important if they're going to establish a new tag title division in AEW. Having Brodito as the champions, they play well, they work well together. I think this is perfect for them. They need to keep their title reign and have more of an established title run. This builds up all kinds of potential challengers. You've got FTR, you've got Cope and Cage, you've got the Hurt Syndicate, now you've got the Young Bucks. You got all these guys that they can root, Jet Speed, all these teams that they can utilize and have challenge Brodito, which it's not a bad problem to have. And so now we're starting to get a more bolstered tag division. And speaking of that, Jack Perry makes his return, attacks the Young Bucks. We're thinking that, is this a face turn for the Young Bucks? But what ends up happening is the lights go out, we roll a video package, and we find out that it was Jack Perry that revived Luchasaurus, and then they reunite in the ring, which I thought was very well done. And now we have the return of Jurassic Express. Is Marco Stunt going to return? I'm sure Jim Cornette is having a coronary somewhere thinking about the fact that that is a possibility. But we could, and that could be a very interesting scenario. But I think that this new grungy Jurassic Express could be really good. And so now you've got them against the Young Bucks. You've got a really good tag division here. You know, I don't know if Jack Perry is going to continue this momentum as a fan favorite. We're going to see how the crowd responds to him in that regard. But the crowd really wants to love Luchasaurus. He is the monster. He is the Kane. He is that proverbial giant figure that the fans can really get behind. And he's got a great story, his personal struggles, the things that he's gone through. I think it's time to really push Luchasaurus to the max here and get the most out of what he is capable of and also what the crowd is willing to get behind. So you can't go wrong with that. I'd like to see where they go with this going forward. But definitely very well done video package. Filmed very well. I was very much a fan of that. And in the main event, Hangman Adam Page defeats Kyle Fletcher. 38-minute match. So Kyle Fletcher's the TNT champion. A lot of people think it was premature to put him in this main event type of scenario when he's the TNT champion, and they felt that the loss kind of hurt him a little bit. I don't know if I agree with that necessarily. I think Kyle Fletcher, they're testing to see if he's capable of being a main eventer, and I believe this match definitely cemented the fact that he can main event going forward. He is still very young, 26 years old. I'm sure Mark Davis, his former tag team partner, is over there, socking air right now. I mean, he's a memory, he's just an aberration at this point. A lot of people don't remember Mark Davis, but Kyle Fletcher, standout star. This is what I'm sure they fear Montez Ford and Angelo Dawkins splitting up would do, is have Angelo Dawkins fade off into the back and Montez Ford become the standout performer. But this is exactly what I would have expected for Montez Ford, and Kyle Fletcher is getting it and then some. Kyle Fletcher being the future, it's all gonna lean on the fact that if he is the future, then they need to keep him in the eyes of the fans on television and keep his momentum going. I think this is establishing a way better title reign for Hangman Adam Page than his first title reign. And I thought that was well done. I mean, in an event where you had a lot of guys injured, you had Swerve, Kenny, Will Ospreay, all on the injured list, all starters, right? All main event guys injured. Over and all, AEW All Out did a good job of bringing some ancillary players out, some guys off the bench, and utilizing them to show that they could be capable of main eventing, which I thought was a well done thing. I don't think those guys, they were obviously missed, but I don't think them not being a part of the pay-per-view hurt the pay-per-view at all. So I thought that was really, really a good thing for AEW. They can breathe a sigh of relief to know that some of their younger stars, they can put in these big time match situations and they can thrive. And you would hope for that as somebody that's running a company like AEW. You know that your future is in good hands when you have somebody like Kyle Fletcher at the top of the card. Best compliment that I can give. Over and all, this wasn't a standout pay-per-view. This wasn't the best pay-per-view. It's very similar to WrestlePalooza. Perfectly acceptable wrestling. It went a little too long, but you did see progression of stories, not the stories that I'm sure a lot of people were hoping to get and everything. Not a whole lot of big surprises, but it did a good job. They had great wrestling, and I really liked a lot of what the performers did in the ring. So you can't ask for something better for a B-level pay-per-view like AEW All Out. So that's what I thought of AEW All Out. Did you watch AEW All Out? And what do you think? You guys let me know in the comments. Drop it down. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you liked it, if you hated it, if you liked my review, if you hated it. I'm cool with it all, you guys. Don't forget to